Welcome to Aircast, where we feature military leaders, discuss Air Force ROTC along with our experiences, and uncover the latest in defense and Air Force news. I'm your host, Cadet Captain Parker Lozier, and without further ado, let's get into our segments. Fights on.
Welcome to the Military News segment, covering the latest in military aviation and defense news. I'm Cadet Lambert, and today we've got some incredible updates from around the globe, from the icy roads of Finland to the hot deserts of India, and the legacy of one of the most iconic planes in U.S. Air Force history. Let's dive into our top stories. First, a major milestone in NATO's history of air power. For the first time ever, two U.S. Air Force F-35 Lightning II aircraft successfully landed on a highway in Finland. That's right, during exercise BAANA 2024, the fifth-generation fighter jets executed a historic austere landing as part of NATO's Agile Combat Employment strategies. This isn't just a test of the aircraft's capabilities, but also a demonstration of the growing partnership between the U.S. and Finland, who recently joined NATO in 2023. General James Hecker, commander of the U.S. Air Forces in Europe, said this landing shows how ready and adaptable NATO forces are to operate from unconventional locations. This exercise underscores the alliance's goal of rapid deployment and reflects the agility needed in modern combat scenarios. Now, moving over to South Asia, the U.S. Pacific Air Forces have been busy in India. Exercise Tarak Shakti 24, the largest multinational exercise ever hosted by India, kicked off its second phase on August 30th. This massive event brings together 10 nations, with 18 more observing, to enhance the collaboration in critical capabilities like Air Force defense, reconnaissance, and close air support. U.S. Air Force units, including the A-10 Thunderbolt II and the F-16C Fighting Falcon, are training alongside forces from countries like Australia, Singapore, and the UAE. The focus: strengthening interoperability and tactile integration into the Indo-Pacific region. With a complex geopolitical landscape, the Indo-Pacific is a strategy hotspot, and exercises like Tarak Shakti give participating nations the edge they need to work seamlessly in any operational environment. As Lieutenant Colonel Justin Davis, commander of the 25th Expeditionary Fighter Squadron, put it, "The more we train and learn together, the better prepared we are for the complex challenges in this region." Finally, we can't talk about military aviation without mentioning one of the most enduring workhorses in the U.S. Air Force fleet, the C-130 Hercules. Celebrating 70 years since its first flight in 1954, the C-130 remains a cornerstone of air mobility, capable of transporting troops and supplies to the most remote locations on Earth. From icy Antarctica to the deserts of the Middle East, this aircraft has done it all. Robins Air Force Base recently hosted the 70th anniversary celebration, recognizing the Hercules' enduring legacy. The base plays a crucial role in keeping the C-130's mission ready through maintenance and modernization. With great power competition driving new demands, especially in the Pacific theater, the C-130 is being upgraded with more powerful engines, advanced avionics, and new propeller technologies to extend its range and capabilities. As Michael Beasley, senior material leader for the C-130 Hercules Division, said, "The C-130 will be key in supporting agile combat employment, particularly in the vast and logistically challenging Pacific theater." After 70 years of flying, this iconic aircraft shows no signs of slowing down and will continue to be a critical asset for the Air Force for decades to come. That's all for today's military news segment. We'll continue to bring you the latest in military aviation and defense news, so stay tuned.
Hello Aircats, this is Cadet Pilly here to introduce you to our new Det 665 Commander, Lieutenant Colonel Toby Andrews. Lieutenant Colonel Andrews started his Air Force career after graduating from Miami University with a Bachelor's of Science in Secondary Social Studies. He then attained his Master's in Criminal Justice from the University of Cincinnati. Lieutenant Colonel Andrews is a command pilot and has logged over 1,900 hours, primarily in rotary-winged aircraft. Throughout his career, he has held many leadership positions, with his first being Commander Support Staff Officer in 2006 to 2007, and his most recent before becoming AFROTI Det 665 Commander, the commander of the 36th Rescue Squadron in 2021 to 2024. Currently, as the AFROTI Detachment Commander and Professor of Aerospace Studies, his focus is directing the recruiting, educating, training, and character building of students from among 12 universities and colleges for commissioning into the United States Air Force as second lieutenants. We are all very excited for Lieutenant Colonel Andrews to be our deck commander, and now I'm going to hand it off to Cadet Lozier with a one-on-one interview.
Hey Aircats, this is Cadet Captain Lozier. I'm here with Lieutenant Colonel Andrews.
Hey Aircats.
He's going to be the first person we have on the Aircats podcast for the fall semester of 2024. Lieutenant Colonel Andrews, you provide a brief overview of your career, some milestones, some achievements, some background on your job as well.
Yeah, sounds good. So my Air Force career started at Miami University. That's where I did my undergrad in ROTC. Graduated from there, and I got picked up to be a pilot in the Air Force. Went down to casual status, so awaiting pilot training status, down at Hurlburt Field in Florida, which is the home of the Air Force Special Operations Command. So I was at the 6th Special Operations Squadron, which does foreign internal defense training, or did at that time, and they flew a bunch of weird aircraft that nobody else in the Air Force got to fly. So I got to fly on some pretty cool things. Really made me want to be a pilot, and really started to focus on wanting to be a helicopter pilot a little bit. But I really liked the AFSOC mission and thought that the AFSOC mission special operations were really cool. So went to pilot training shortly after, flew the T6. Pilot training was a little bit different at that time. Now you track select whether or not you want to go into helicopters beforehand in your commissioning source, so in ROTC or the academy first, and then you go to those later. As I was going through, it was a little bit different, where everybody went to the T6 first. You got done with T6s, and then you would do a track select where you do fighter bombers, heavies, or helicopters, and I chose helicopters out of that. Went to helicopter training down at Fort Novosel, Alabama, which is obviously an Army base, so first start of joint training. We still did everything kind of to the side with the Air Force, but we had a lot of old Army instructors that were there with us. So got to have some crazy experiences and hear about some crazy experiences from some folks that flew Hueys and other aircraft back in Vietnam, with some of the instructors like getting shot in the chest multiple times and passing out right as they land back at home base after doing missions and stuff, because they had been shot and bleeding out, and landing their Huey and passing out in the pilot seat, right? Before even shut down their aircraft. So some pretty cool stories there. Some actual true American heroes, which was pretty cool to hear. So from there, went to the UH-1N out at Kirtland Air Force Base for initial qualification training. Went to Joint Base Andrews doing some DV support and continuity of government operations out in DC area. Then went back to Kirtland as an instructor to teach those new students that were going through the UH-1N schoolhouse. While I was there, I deployed to the Joint Personnel Recovery Center, which is at the Combined Air Operations Center and Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. Went there, did that for a few months. While I was there, helped plan our initial operations going into Syria. So all of the first operations when we were first going into Syria, like the night that we first went into Syria, I was there and watching the little blue dot go across the line, and we all kind of collectively held our breath to see it pop back up on the other side, because we were all worried that they were going to get shot down because of the integrated air defense systems that were in place, or that we thought were in place in Syria. So helped to plan that, came back home from there, and just continued on working through UH-1N stuff. Went up to F.E. Warren Air Force Base, where I got to support Global Strike Command through missile defense and missile security operations. So missile maintenance has to happen on our intercontinental ballistic missiles all the time, and while those warheads are being transported, worked on, it creates a little bit more of a security risk. So we're there and armed Hueys to be able to protect those assets, because those are such a strategic level asset that we're there to help protect those and make sure that bad actors don't try to attack those or get their hands on them or anything else. From there, I was luckily selected for my first command opportunity, and that was down at the Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape School at Lackland Air Force Base. So Joint Base San Antonio, Lackland, which is the largest joint base that we have, and I was down there as a major commander. So trying to get things done with a whole lot of general officers all over the base and a whole lot of other people that are there that have competing priorities with the base. But our primary mission was to take all of the recent BMT, so the basic military training graduates that were coming out of basic on the enlisted side and wanted to be a survival specialist. They would come over, we would start their training pipeline, and then we also had evasion and conduct after capture course, which is part of the survival training platform. And that survival training dealt with resistance training and people who that were at a higher risk of being captured by enemy forces that hadn't gone through all of the formal survival training that happens up at Fairchild Air Force Base. So that was mostly security forces, civil engineers, some of our joint partners would come through that course. And it was a short course to get them ready to go out the door as part of their pre-deployment spin-up. Then 2020 happened and got to deal with folks coming all over the world to our course and then folks going back all out over the world. JBSA was the hub for the Air Force for the initial COVID response. I had some of my individual duty medical technicians. They were working with the Surgeon General of the United States, Surgeon General of the Air Force to try to figure out what COVID was, how do we respond to COVID, how do we continue basic going through COVID, how do we continue deploying people through COVID. So pretty high level stuff there and some really cool innovations that came out of that, and got a lot of information about what was going on as we started mounting the entire DoD and the country's response to what ended up being the COVID-19 pandemic. Left there, went up to Fairchild Air Force Base as the Director of Operations and then the Commander of the 36th Rescue Squadron, which their primary mission is to support the main survival school up at Fairchild. So helping those students that are going through the course, the longer courses that are up there, both on the aircrew side that are at risk of capture, and then also the advanced courses for those survival instructors that are trying to become SEER specialists, training them all over the place. So we would do training for both of those kind of aspects of it. And then from there, got picked up for ROTC back to my alma mater of the University of Cincinnati, which is where I did my master's while I was at Joint Base Andrews.
So reflecting on the start of your career, what is one piece of advice you wish you had received early on that would have impacted your professional growth?
So the one thing that I wish somebody would have told me from the beginning is one of the things that I shared with everybody at the first lead lab of what makes your career in the Air Force and ROTC and anything else. And it's those three things that I talked about. So the first being your performance. That is the one controllable that you have, that you can control, that you have influence over. And with your performance comes your attitude and how you take care of that. The two others are who you know and your timing. You can influence those, but you can't necessarily control those. So I didn't realize that early in my career. Nobody just came straight out and told me, hey, these are the things that impact your career. And I really had to learn those throughout my career. Most of that comes through social interactions with folks and realizing how small the Air Force actually is. Everybody thinks of, the Air Force is this huge, huge entity. And at times it can be, but also it can be super, super small. Like when I got here, Mr. Izumi talked to me about one of his previous cadets that was one of my students while I was in my second assignment in Albuquerque, Kirtland Air Force Base at the formal training unit. So there's that. I have friends now that are in det command positions at other places that I've made throughout my life and my career. It's really, really a real small Air Force. So the people that you know that's a double-edged sword, right? Because there's going to be people that you like and there's going to be people that you don't like. The best advice that I could give anybody is don't burn bridges. You don't have to necessarily be friends with people, but be an acquaintance with them. Because at some point in time, you're going to run back into them. But again, I go into me being here and having a shot at command at all within my career was, number one, my performance for a previous boss, him knowing me, and then the timing working out. And having that viewpoint of my performance matters, who I know and how things work out on timing, that also has an impact on it. But what are the things that I can control? And that's my attitude and my performance. And that doesn't mean that I have to be all the time right. That doesn't mean I have to succeed in everything I do, but I've at least got to learn from it and have a good attitude when I do fail.
So as the 400s Prepared Commission, what guidance would you offer them on navigating the transition from being a cadet in ROTC to being a second lieutenant?
So we've ran into this a lot with folks that get delayed. One, be patient, right? Not everything's going to work out on your timeline. The Air Force has its timeline. There's going to be different factors that influence that, so always be patient. Have a plan, though, that you can fall back to. So another big thing that comes from aviation is always have a plan to deviate from, right? If you don't have a plan, there's a saying of it's all thrust, no vector, right? So you can have as much energy behind something as you want, but if you aren't getting it vectored in the direction that you need to get it vectored into, then you're just going to have everything going all over the place, and it's going to look crazy. So have a plan to deviate from, but be willing for that plan to change. It can change at the last moment. I know of people that had orders, household goods packed up, and were getting ready to leave, and they get a call that their orders just got changed and they're going to a completely different place, right? So you've got to be flexible. You've got to understand that the Air Force, again, is a large entity, and it takes time, and sometimes it can be frustrating for you as the individual, but you have to realize that service before self sometimes comes into play. But just be patient, have a good attitude again with it, because if you are running into roadblocks, the better attitude that you have, and try to seek to understand and not demand things of people, because now you're like, all right, I'm no longer a cadet, I'm an officer. People have got to respect me, right? And they do, and they will respect your rank, but you get there's an old saying of you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar, right? So try to be that nice person that goes in, seeks to understand what the issue is, and if you can do that, people are going to be more willing to help you out if you do run into those roadblocks.
So, in your opinion, what additional steps should cadets be taking outside of formal ROTC training to fully prepare for the demands and responsibilities of being an officer in the Air Force?
So there's a lot that you can do, but it kind of falls into what the Air Force a few years ago put out, which was the 4 pillars of health. So the mental pillar, the physical pillar, the social, and the spiritual. Mental comes down to, are you trying to continuously learn, right? Never stop learning. You've got to get your degree first before you can ever become an Air Force officer. So do that. Learn the principles, learn the knowledge, learn all of those things that you can. Learn your leadership abilities, learn everything else. The physical comes down to, just like we talk about at PT all the time, you're not going to be ready for an Air Force career if all you do is PT Tuesday, Thursday. That's just got to be a part of your lifestyle. So not just the PT portion, but also the nutrition portion. What you're putting in is what you're going to get out, right? So good in, good out kind of thing, and make sure that you're ready to go on that. On the social, you've got to have, not necessarily like you have to have a ton of close friends, or you've got to go out and you've got to hang out with people, but you've got to have those bonds with other people, whether that's online, whether that's in person, whatever the case may be. You've got to have those bonds with other people, and that is one of the biggest parts of my Air Force career that I love. Just like the Air Force is actually really small, it's because of those relationships that you make and the bonds that you make with other people. It's all about the other people. And that's why pretty much everybody that I know, that's the biggest reason why they stay around for a long time in the Air Force, is because of all the quality people that are around you. And you've got to have those social bonds to be able to do that. On the spiritual side, everybody thinks that that is like, faith-based. It can be for some people, but really what it comes down to is your purpose, your drive, and what your perspectives are when you're looking at life. So you've got to, on the spiritual side, if you aren't, a faith-based person, then at least have what your perspectives are, how you view things, and how you view your purpose. If you don't have that, the Air Force has it for you, right? It's got the core values. It's got the things that you can focus on and try to get you focused from what is happening on the outside into how do I intrinsically view my life, myself, how I fit into the bigger picture, how I'm part of something much larger than myself. So don't always think the spiritual is just faith-based. Think about it as just your perspective and how you intrinsically think about things too. And if you focus on those 4 pillars, the mental, the physical, the social, the spiritual, you focus on those and making those strong, then that holds you up and helps you get through life much better and get through your Air Force career. So when things do come along and there's a speed bump, they don't hurt as much, and you're able to weather those a little bit better.
A lot of our feedback forms have those sections in there where, we reflect on our mental, physical, spiritual goals. It's cool that those foundational pillars are prevalent already in our ROTC life, that we can carry on that to duty.
Yeah, it's absolutely true, because you have to think about what the Air Force is asking you to do, right? The mission of the Air Force is to fly, fight, and win. And what that means is, at times, potentially doing harm to other people and other people wanting to do harm to us. That takes a lot to be able to get through that. It takes a lot, whether you're a pilot or a missileer or, whatever your job is, that you're pushing a button, pulling a trigger, whatever you are doing in that kill chain, it takes a lot on the inside to be able to do that and to be able to work through that. So the Air Force is really focused on making sure that those 4 pillars are strong. And again, you have to be able to have that worldview, have that perspective, and know intrinsically, I'm doing what is needed of me because of the organization that I'm in and those higher callings that we have of being a part of something bigger than ourselves. So you've got to have that baseline there to be able to do what the Air Force is asking you to go do, because it's not easy. What the Air Force is asking of you, whether it's actually being part of a kill chain to kill the enemies, or it's just leading people. We are making you officers of leaders of people. That is what we are doing as ROTC. Our job is to make you an officer and a leader of people. You're going to have people that come into your office as a leader, and they've got a lot of baggage that comes with life. And they may be going through the worst moments in their life, and they're looking to you for help. If you aren't rooted, how are you going to be able to help them get through that? So it's not just from an Air Force mission perspective, but it's also from a leadership perspective on helping people walk through and being right there with them as an officer, as a leader, as a friend, of how do I walk somebody through something that they're going through in life? Because we're all people and life's going to happen. You've got to be there as that leader to be able to be there for somebody, and then also be able to be rooted enough to say, hey, I need help. I'm going through some stuff right now, and I need to go get some help and, have somebody help me out with some things. So you've got to be able to do that too. And that's where the self-reflection and having those goals and setting those goals, at some points they seem like that seems kind of arbitrary, but that's really what it's getting at, is you've got to be able to deal with people, and the mission that the Air Force asks you to do can be pretty strenuous and at times take a toll on all of those 4 pillars. So you've got to be strong in that on your own to be able to do what the Air Force is asking you to do.
So, Lieutenant Colonel Andrews, what was the transition like flying a high-powered turboprop aircraft like the T-6 Texan A, and then going into a rotor wing aircraft like the Huey?
So for me, it was a reprieve. My inner ear did not like flying upside down. So I got to be airsick a few times and got to experience a Barony chair, which if you get a chance to look up the Barony chair, I'm pretty sure it was created as a medieval torture device that the Air Force just continued on. And basically it spins you around in a circle and they stop you quickly, and you get a sensation in your inner ear from the fluid moving around that feels like you're tumbling and moving in different ways, so that it desensitizes the hairs inside your inner ear so that you don't get airsick. So I got airsick from that and got to puke my guts out for an entire weekend, which was not very fun. I realized I wasn't going to do that again. So I made it through pilot training, ended up with aerobatics being a fun part of it, but I knew that flying upside down and stuff wasn't what my body was built for. So, and I was really happy doing low-level stuff. That was a whole lot of fun on low-level planning, being close down to the ground, and kind of doing that mission set. So going to helicopters was a reprieve for my inner ear, and also something that I really wanted to do. I liked the mission of helicopters. I liked being lower to the ground and having that more tactical response that you have in a helicopter versus what you have in airplanes. So the biggest, just from a from a flying it standpoint, the principles are really the same once you get going and you're in the air. Really where it comes down to is taking off and landing. And when you first pick up in a helicopter, I got an appreciation for it as an instructor myself once I got to my second full duty assignment and being an instructor. But man, my instructors at Fort Novosel, those guys, they were hardened, battled American heroes, because I felt like I was going to kill us the entire time. And they're like, yeah, you're good job. They didn't even come close to the controls usually. We're parking, picking up, parking, setting down right next to other helicopters, and we all think we're about ready to die. But they didn't. The interesting thing about helicopters, unlike planes, is planes, as you come into land, you're decreasing power and you're bringing the nose up. But with a helicopter, you're increasing power and you're taking the nose down, typically. So it's a little bit different on the muscle movements of your hands, so you have to get used to that. Planes like to fly. You get a plane in the air, man, that thing likes to go. That's what wings are built for. The best way that I've heard a helicopter be described as an egg beater beating the air into submission, and a bunch, like thousands of parts flying in close formation together. So helicopters inherently do not want to fly. That is not what they want to do. They want to resist every force of nature to get them up in the air. But planes, you get them going and they just kind of want to keep going. So planes are much easier to fly than helicopters are. The aerodynamics are completely different. Helicopters have their own aerodynamics that you have to think about that you don't have to worry about in planes whatsoever. So it was a little bit of a learning curve for everybody trying to break out of that fixed wing mindset. But overall, it became a ton of fun, and landing in a spot that's about 100 by 100 in the middle of trees, that's pretty cool. And usually when planes do that, it's called crashing. Helicopters get to do that and take back off. So it becomes more fun.
So flying helicopters for a great length of your career, you say that you don't appreciate Fortunate Son being played as much anymore.
You do, but it just it harkens you back to different memories than what you would otherwise. Yeah.
Having a flight or sortie that doesn't go as planned or as well as you thought it would be, how have you grown to react to those failures and come back in the cockpit, into the saddle, and do better next time?
Yeah, so while I was going through pilot training, once in T6s and then once in the UH-1H, not the UH-1N, but while I was going through pilot training, hooked rides on those. My hooked ride in T6s, that one that I hooked based on not puking, but on actually my performance, was because I went out to an area that I didn't know and I didn't study it well enough. Went out on a check ride, on a mid-phase check ride, hadn't been out to that area, and completely screwed stuff up. Screwed up my communications calls, screwed up my altitudes, didn't have a great plan for what I was going to do once I got into the area, on what maneuvers I was going to do and how I had it set up. So that one was definitely a planning issue, and not chair flying it enough, not sitting down in my chair and going, okay, when I'm at this point, this is what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. I just really hadn't thought through it that much. And that one really came down to my planning and what I was going to do. The ride that I hooked when I was in initial helicopter training, that one I had a significant emotional event happen with my family, and there was some stuff going on with my family that day, and I kept that inside and I didn't tell my instructor what was going on. I was like, okay, I'm a student, I'm here to fly, like everything that was there I have to compartmentalize and just push that out, and I've got to go fly. And it was a pretty significant event that turned out to be a positive thing and not as bad as what I thought it was. But when I stepped into the brief that day, I thought things were really, really, really bad. And I didn't tell my instructor. I didn't speak up. I didn't ask for that help that I needed at that point to be able to go, hey, I'm struggling with some other stuff on the outside from flying. Like, I'm not ready for this at all. And all of those outside things weighed on me, and I ended up getting lost as we were flying. I couldn't find the landing zone that I was supposed to go to. I was completely off on so the way that we would navigate at that point was you would look at your clock on where you were. So how long have I been flying? You'd look at your map, and then you look at the ground. We call it clock map ground. And that would keep you on track as long as you maintain the same speed. You knew about where you would be. You could look for the landmarks, look at your map, and figure out where you were. And I was completely lost. At that point, I had already hooked the ride, got back, and then my instructor's like, what's going on? you normally always have this. Like, I'm looking at your training record, like, you have been rock solid this entire time. Like, and now it was like completely different student sitting in the seat next to me. Like, what happened? And so I open up to him and let him know everything that was going on in my personal life. And he's like, are you kidding me? Like, we wouldn't have flown today. So don't think that just because the role that you're in as a student, and again, that was one of those moments where I realized, like, hey, we're people. We're not just students. We're not just instructors. Like, we're people, and you have to take care of the people first, because the mission's not going to get done if you don't take care of the people first. And that was a way that it really to me showed me, like, all right, I've got to be willing to ask for that help, ask for that reprieve when I need it, and allow somebody to give me that help from the outside when I need it. Because if not, I'm just going to get all caught up in everything, not know where I'm at, and be completely lost. And at that point, I was completely lost. I had no clue which way was north other than what the compass was telling me in the aircraft, but I had no clue where I was in southeastern Alabama. You could have pointed anywhere, and I would not have known at that point where I was. So don't be afraid to call yourself out. You know, if you are at the point where you have reached a stress level where you are now distressed, not in that prime optimum stress area, but you are now to the point of being distressed, your performance is going to go down. And you've got to be willing to reach out and tell somebody what's going on, so that way they can help you out and save you from yourself at times too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Important you're making that go or no go decision with
Yep.
flying.
And life, not just flying. Life lessons get wrapped up in all that too.
Life lessons with Lieutenant Colonel Andrew.
Yeah, we got a new podcast idea. There we go. Pontifications of the PAS.
So what do you consider to be the most essential skills or qualities for success in the military, and how can cadets actively work to develop those during ROTC?
So the first one's going to sound like I woke up this morning and drank a big old glass of Blue Air Force Kool-Aid. I didn't, I promise. It was coffee. But the first one is really integrity, right? Like, you have to be willing to do the right things when nobody's looking. You have to be willing to own your mistakes, to own the solution, and own the problem, right? So that's something that you have to have, and that is a quality of an Air Force officer and of an ROTC cadet, that it can be there intrinsically, but you've also got to work to develop that all the time. So when presented the opportunity to take responsibility for something, to own your mistake, do it, right? That is the number one quality. And I know that sounds like a little Blue Air Force Kool-Aid of integrity first, but it really comes down to that. That is the biggest quality of somebody, and there are ways that you work through that. Sometimes you fight against that self-interest that you have of, oh, I want to protect myself, oh, it's just a little white lie, or, oh, I can be late for this, or I can do this, or I can come up with an excuse for that. Sometimes you just got to own the mistake, and you've got to say, hey, yep, I screwed up, and move on. And you use those opportunities as you go through now through ROTC, where it's something small of being late for PT or not turning in a paper or whatever the case may be. Use that opportunity in those small things for when those bigger things come along. The other is a huge skill is balancing your work and your life, all right? Your career and your life, work-life balance, synergy, whatever buzzword you want to use for it. You've got to start developing those skills now of how do I balance the things that I need to do with the things that I want to do and the things that build up those other pillars, right? Those social pillars, the spiritual pillar, the physical pillar. Like, if you are focusing all on your academics right now and you're not taking the time to eat right, to go work out, to get the sleep that you need, to just veg out every once in a while and do whatever it is that you want to do for a little bit, you know, if you're not taking that time and can't balance that now and learn those skills, it's going to become even harder in the future. So work on that right now. The other thing is have a big picture view. You're going to be asked to do a lot of things that at times may seem like, man, this is a menial task, or this just seems like something that I've just got to replicate over and over and over, and sometimes they can get monotonous, but you've got to have that big picture view of how this relates to everything else that you're doing. You know, that one quiz that you need to turn in, or the one homework assignment, or the one warrior knowledge test, or whatever it may be, right? Like, that one thing, look at it from the bigger perspective of what that's going to lead to later on. And then the other part is never stop learning. Like, never think that you know it all. I know that I don't know it all. At points in time, that's because I just have absolutely no knowledge of it, or there's times where you may be the subject matter expert, but there's always going to be somebody that knows it better than you that's going to do it better than you. So never, ever, ever stop learning. We are always a work in progress. This is my third time in command, and I can tell you right now, I still am learning how to be a good commander, right? You learn from every single opportunity that you have, and as long as you do that, you're going to be on the right path. But as soon as you think, I know it all, I have all the answers, like, write yourself off at that point.
Yeah.
Right? You've got to always be willing to take that input and always be willing to learn. And that's one of the characteristics of an Air Force officer that you do all the time, both in formal professional military education as you go through your career, and then also informally as you go through different kind of upgrades within your career field, as you go through different kind of job trainings. You become instructors, you become evaluators, you become the trainer, you become the trainer of the trainers, and then, at some point in time, depending on what you do in a career, you maybe become that commander of the unit. You've always got to continue learning and have that drive to know that I don't always know, so let me go find where that other information's at.
What has been the most profound lesson you've learned in your time in the Air Force, and how has that shaped your leadership approach?
So while I was at F.E. Warren, I was working at a group level job. And I walked in one day before anybody else was there, or at least before I thought anybody else was there. And I walk in and I'm getting everything set up and I'm like, all right, go hit the restroom and then I'm going to get started on some stuff. So I walk into the restroom and I think I'm the only person in the building. And I walk in and I see feet in one of the stalls, but the door's open. And I'm like, I thought I was the only one here. And I hear my group commander say, hey, good morning. My group commander is in the stall, and he is cleaning the toilets because the cleaning contract had lapsed. There wasn't money for it at the time, and other people hadn't been cleaning the bathroom up. And the group commander went in there, and he was literally cleaning the toilets because no one else would clean them. And he looked at me, and he's like, don't tell anybody else about this. I don't want them to know that I'm doing it. Well, sorry, sir. People know now on the Aircast podcast. They know now, but I won't reveal his name. But he was in there, and that really spoke to me. That hit home. And that's really where one of those experiences where the leave it better than you found it really hit home to me. Because if he's willing to do that, and he saw that there was a need that other people weren't doing, and people were just walking by it every day. People were walking by the dirty bathroom every single day and just leaving it. And that convicted me as a person too. And I'm like, man, I've walked by this. I haven't done that either. I haven't been here in the morning scrubbing toilets and picking up trash and the paper towels on the floor or whatever else. So that really was a formative moment for me, seeing a senior leader at that level, one, willing to do that, two, caring about his people enough that he didn't want them to have a dirty bathroom, so he was going to come in when he thought nobody else was there and clean the restrooms for them. So that was a pretty formative moment for me, and that's really where I really internalized the just leave everywhere that you walk into, whether it's a job, whether it's a bathroom, whether it's an office, whether it's a building, whatever the case may be, leave it better than you found it. Even if it's in a small way, just leave it a little bit better than you found it, and hopefully if everybody has that attitude, everything just gets better as you go forward. Any other bonus questions from Cadet Scheid?
Cadet Scheid would like to know if you have any recommendations as far as reading, books for people wanting to improve upon their officership skills.
Yeah.
And what books you would suggest them checking out.
All right, so not necessarily a book, but I talked to the 400s today in class about this. When everybody who's contracted or you commission, you take an oath. And what do you take an oath to? Support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And if you ask everybody who's read the Constitution of the United States,
No one.
Not a whole lot of people, right? But man, you're willing to lay your life down for it, so how about we go read it? So that would be the number one thing that I would say for people to read. They're in the program, and to be a good military officer is read the thing that you're saying you're willing to lay your life down for. Read it, know it. Some parts, not necessarily applicable. There's a whole lot in there. And there's one sitting on my desk at all times of the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution sitting right there. Because I want to know, I want to be able to see the thing that I'm saying I'm going to lay my life down for. So if that's not cool enough for you, then the other part, a couple of books. One's a real oldie but goodie, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It's been updated a few times kind of throughout history, but a lot of really good principles in there. Some of them seem pretty dated, which they are because they were written a long time ago. But there's some really good principles in there. Another one, especially for newly commissioned officers, is The First 90 Days by Michael Watkins. That one is about how you go into an organization, learn about the organization, and start getting some small wins so that you can get buy-in from folks as you go in. So that's a good one. And if you're not into books, some great movies and shows, Band of Brothers, We Were Soldiers, and then another really old one is 12 O'Clock High from 1949. That one, if you want to watch a movie that has a lot of principles about early Air Force bombing, early Air Force flying, aviation world in general, but then also just about leadership and different principles of leadership from a bunch of different perspectives, it's an oldie, but man, it's a goodie. 12 O'Clock High. That's a good movie to watch. But all of those, Band of Brothers show is amazing. We Were Soldiers is absolutely amazing. Really gets into a lot of history of leadership also, but then 12 O'Clock High, that's a oldie but a goodie.
Yeah, my grandpa introduced me to 12 O'Clock High, young age. Second I found out what a B-17 was, that's when I knew I wanted to be a pilot. So there was one here recently, and screwed up watching that with my grandpa, and then his wife, her dad was a waist gunner, so he would hop around on B-17s when they lost crew members, so he was just like just a replacement, and survived 35 combat missions over Germany. And
wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so just a big pillar in my, why as well. But it's cool to see that you also appreciate, the flying fortresses and the air campaigns of World War II. Yeah,
and again, that's kind of the backdrop to it, but really the story is about how do you lead people through really, really difficult times? And you see that in different leadership styles through that. Same thing with Band of Brothers. How do you lead people through different times? And you see huge different styles of leadership between then Lieutenant Winters, Captain Sobel, all of these different people that are there that are real people that the book was based on. So if you still want to read a book, Shide, you can read Band of Brothers, you can read We Were Soldiers Once and Young, you can read those books also. But for the folks that don't want to do that, the movies and the shows do a great representation of showing you what those different leadership styles are.
Yeah, of course, don't be the guy that makes spaghetti and orders your people to make spaghetti for you and then have them run up a mountain. So one of the key points for Band of Brothers for sure.
Yeah, don't be Captain Sobel. But also, you learn that in one, I guess kind of going back to one of the other questions, of things that I've learned throughout my career, you have to learn something from everybody. Every interaction you go into with another person, you either learn what to do or what not to do. And even with that example of Captain Sobel, right? Like that airborne company would not have been as good as they were if Captain Sobel hadn't been the one that was making them do that too. And they actually give him credit later on about him making Easy Company as tough as they were was because of the Captain Sobel. Now, nobody likes the Captain Sobel, and you shouldn't be the hardcore Captain Sobel, right? But there's times where you need to be that Captain Sobel to get the better performance out of your folks. But then that comes into, you may agree with why somebody does something, but maybe not necessarily always the how they do it. So a little bit of refinement there, and Captain Sobel could have been a really, really good leader for everybody that wants to watch Band of Brothers. He could have been a really, really good leader, but there were things that brought him down, right? An unwillingness to learn, unwillingness to accept feedback and to move on, right? And there were other folks that did that a little bit better. But that's really a lot of things that it comes down to is accepting that feedback, always wanting to learn, always wanting to better yourself. That's really what the Air Force comes down to. That's what being a leader comes down to. Again, big picture wise, right? At some point in time, the Air Force uniform comes off. So whether that's while you're in ROTC, whether that's after 4 years of being in the Air Force or 30 years of being in the Air Force, you could be Chief of Staff. You could be the next General C.Q. Brown and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, right? That can happen. But at some point in time, the uniform comes off. And the goal is leave you better than you found it. So for everybody, just try to be a better person every single day that you wake up, and just move forward and move out on that next day trying to do better than you did the day before, and you're going to be all right.
What's one of the craziest experiences you've had in your flying career?
Well, there's a student pilot, and he's flying and he's going toward DC, which is some of the most restrictive airspace in the world, right? Even, everybody's being watched while you're there, very highly monitored, because you've got the White House, you've got everything that's there. So there's prohibited airspace that no aircraft can go into without special permission, like Marine One is going in, right? Like that's it kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And there's a student pilot that takes off from one of the local airports and completely gets himself lost, and he starts going toward basically the White House. And you hear everybody come on, and it's aircraft at this position, at this altitude. This is the United States Air Force on guard. You need to immediately reverse course and turn back around. And then you hear, U.S. Air Force, I'm a student pilot. I don't know where I'm at. I'm in November 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm not sure where I'm at or where I'm going. November 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the United States Air Force on guard. You must immediately turn around. You are entering a restricted area. You are heading toward restricted airspace. Immediately turn around. I don't know where I'm going. A couple minutes later, all you hear is November 1, 2, 3, 4. This is Viper 1 flight. We are the flight of two F-16s that just passed you on your right-hand side. Immediately turn and follow us back to this airport. And you hear, I'm not from that airport. I'm from the other airport. Can you take me back to the other airport? No, November 1, 2, 3, 4. You will follow us and land at this assigned airport. Do you understand? That was the funniest call on guard that I have ever heard, because I was scared for that kid, but also at the exact same time, everyone on the airspace in DC all had to be cracking up laughing at the exact same time. You felt bad for him because he, out of no fault of his own, he got lost and got himself into a really bad situation, but man, that was some funny radio traffic to listen to.
Well, thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to be on the Aircast podcast. Look forward to a great 2 years with having you here.
Hopefully more. Hopefully 3 for me. I know only 2 for you, but hopefully at least 3 for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to be leaving here anytime soon. So
I'm sure it's nice being back in the general location of where you grew up and went to college.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. Love Ohio. Love having the opportunity to come back. This is absolutely the best job, and the icing, the cherry on top of the icing, on top of the whipped cream, on top of the cake for me. So absolutely super enjoyable to be here and be back in Ohio.
Another big thank you to Lieutenant Colonel Andrews for coming on the podcast as our first guest speaker. A lot of valuable insight, experiences shared, and some funny stories here and there. Hope you all enjoyed it. Now let's go check in with the new 100s, get to know their names, who they are, where they're from, why they're here.
All right, hello. I'm Cadet Pilly on the PAO team, and today I am interviewing Cadet Thomas. So, Cadet Thomas, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Cadet Thomas. I'm in Delta Flight, and I'm majoring in political science.
Very cool. Could you tell us why you decided to join Air Force ROTC?
My initial goal was to go to the academies, so as soon as I found out I wasn't going to be going there this summer, I enrolled here.
Nice. I had a similar experience. I applied at the academies as well, but unfortunately did not get in. But what job would you like to get in the United States Air Force?
I've been looking at pilot first, but I'm also interested in, I think it's OSI.
Oh, I'm also interested in OSI. And then, what are you looking forward most to, I guess, this first year or first semester of ROTC?
I would say getting to know everybody and like getting a good grounding with the detachment.
All right, thank you very much.
I am Cadet Lambert, and today I'll be interviewing
Cadet Ellis.
So, Cadet Ellis, you're 100 this year, is that right?
That is correct.
What is your favorite thing you've done in ROTC so far?
My favorite thing is the morning PTs. I'm used to it from high school, and I'd love to get after it in the morning. It's awesome.
That's good. What brought you to ROTC?
I wanted to get involved with fighting for my country. It's in the family with my father and his grandfather and so on, and I wanted to get involved myself, but I also wanted to go to college, and I found ROTC, and I thought it was perfect for what I wanted to do.
What are you majoring in here?
I am exploratory, but I am testing into pre-physician assistant after my first semester.
That sounds exciting. What do you want to do in the Air Force after your ROTC?
I want to be a physician assistant for the Air Force at a hospital somewhere. I don't care where, anywhere around the world, but I do want to be a physician assistant for the Air Force.
All right, well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, hello, I'm back. Cadet Pilley here, interviewing Cadet
Fisher.
Cadet Fisher, and could you please tell us your flight and major?
I am in Bravo Flight, and I'm studying aerospace engineering.
Thank you. And can you tell us why you decided to join Air Force ROTC?
I decided to join Air Force ROTC because I wanted to be a leader of the United States. I was originally from Australia, and I moved here at a very young age, and this country has done a lot for me and my family.
Very neat. And what job are you looking at in the Air Force?
I'm looking to become a fighter pilot.
Nice, going rated. And what are you looking forward most to your first semester in Air Force ROTC?
I'm looking forward to learning all of the customs and courtesies of the Air Force, and my favorite part so far has been PT.
Great. Thank you very much.
We hope that you've enjoyed this production of Aircast, presented to you by your Detachment 665 Fall Semester 2024 Public Affairs team. Air Power.